Hi, welcome to Fireside with Peter Adkison on Gen Con TV. On this show, we go in search of the untold stories behind your favorite games. And this season, we have teamed up with the Dungeon Masters Guild, and they have been introducing us to new voices in Dungeons and Dragons. And one of those new voices is with me today, Laura Hirsbrunner. Now, Laura is a game designer. She is also an editor and a graphic designer. We're going to talk a lot about Eberron today, a little bit about Forgotten Realms, but I want to start with her addiction to the M-dash. She confessed that she's addicted to the M-dash. So Laura, did this start off as with the gateway drug, like an M-dash, or did it start off with an experimental phase in college? How did you get here?
Most people, I think, start with a semicolon. Some people jump around back and forth, but I think really once you go M-dash, you don't ever go back. Now, some people like to mix it up. Like you had Sadie on the show a couple weeks ago, and I think she really, would rather jump back and forth between the two drugs. She feels like really all dashes and semicolons and colons and everything have a place in life, but really I just rather use an M-dash for everything.
I'm kind of a fond of the
no judgment.
The ellipses. I kind of like the three.
I use that a lot in text chat. If you get me an instant messenger, I use that a lot.
Okay, yeah, it never survives the formal editing process, but all right. So Laura, so we like to start off kind of biographical. Laura, so tell us how this started. Where were you raised? Where are you from?
I am from Dallas, Texas, and I'm actually there right now. But I was born and raised in Texas. I do not have a Texas accent. I apologize for that. I left to Kentucky for college and kind of never came back. I lived in Kentucky for about 10 years, thereabouts. Fell in love, got married, had a baby. Grandparents wanted the grandbaby to be here for some weird reason. So we found ourselves back in Texas about, however old he is. So almost 6 years ago. However old my children are. My oldest son is 6, and then I have a 3-year-old. So we moved back to Texas about 6-ish years ago, and I am here now.
So did you say when you went to Kentucky, was that for school? Did you say you went to?
Yeah, I did both my I have a bachelor's and master's of social work that I got there, and then worked at universities up there. And my life goal was never to be a D&D editor. That was an accident. I think a lot of people accidentally fall into it, but I was one of those people that accidentally fell into it. But no, I have a master's of social work, and my official professional experience is in academic administration. So things like guidance counseling, academic advising, the person back into offices, pulling the strings and making everything work. So that's what I did really officially my entire life. And then I had a kid, and I transitioned to working from home, and I was freelancing, and I was doing freelance editing in other areas. And then I kind of sort of discovered Dungeons and Dragons, and then I kind of ended up here. So that's the short version.
So yeah, did you grow up playing games in your family?
We loved games, but no, we were, I was one of the satanic panic babies that never had a chance to play Dungeons and Dragons growing up. That would not have happened.
I also was a satanic panic baby, and that made me want
I think
to play
a lot of
Dungeons
us were. I was a little too much of a conformist, but no, I remember in college, a lot of my guy friends played, and I loved all of the culture surrounding it and fantasy, everything. It's just there was a very specific niche of the people that played Dungeons and Dragons, and I was not in that little box. And so I knew that they played, and they never invited me to come, and they were great guys, but I was not going to invite myself because I am the introvert in a cave, and I'm not going to end up in a game with a bunch of guys accidentally, at least not college me. Fast forward a decade and I probably would. But so I've been aware of it in kind of satellite adjacent to D&D culture for a really long time, but it wasn't until I got married in 2010. My husband was once upon a time a player, but then he got busy with grad school and he stopped playing, and it took me 6-7 years of marriage to drag him into running a game for me so that I could finally play. So I am actually very, very new. My first game was probably about 3.5 years ago now.
So you wanted to try it, and you convinced your husband, said, hey, was like, honey, I heard about this Dungeons and Dragons game. I didn't want to play with the weirdos on campus. why don't you run a game? I found your old player's handbook in the closet, something like
Pretty
that.
much. Yeah, it was we had moved back here to Texas, and I had siblings here, and a couple of my siblings were interested. And so I was like, look, I have players for you. You can run the game for my brothers and for my sister-in-law and for me, and we can all have fun. And he begrudgingly agreed. So he started us off on 4E because he is a true believer in 4th edition. And it was actually a lot of fun. I printed out all the little power cards and had a little booklet with the power cards. And,
right.
But I migrated to 5th edition as soon as I could.
But by the way, we are getting chat questions already. I don't the Keith Baker page count question. Maybe we better save that one.
That's quite a question.
And visceral reactions to that one. I think I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to keep that one wide open. What is the Jed Cash is saying? Do you have a visceral reaction to the phrase?
That is actually they are once again teasing Keith. False. The guy asking that first question is actually one of our beta readers and playtesters for Exploring Eberron. And then Jed is one of the Eberron fan community. But they are all well aware that when Keith says it typically means your word count's about to double. We had several stages during the process of developing the aforementioned book that things blossomed. But we can. I don't know if you want to talk about that book now or later.
We'll get to it. Okay. We'll come back to that. We always love it when we get questions from chat, so I got to jump on them. Sometimes you got to just slap them back down and say no, we'll get to that later. So I want to go back to your first experience. So you had this anticipation, it sounds like, for several years of wanting to play Dungeons and Dragons, and then you finally got to play it. What was your reaction to the game? Did you fall in love with it right away, or did it take some work, or did it live up to your expectations? Obviously, you stuck with it.
I think it really took off for me. I mean, I enjoyed it obviously enough that I was in the 4E game that my husband was running, and I wasn't getting enough gameplay. And so I actually went and of my own accord went out of my little bubble enough to find a group of random strangers that were playing some homebrew game on the other side of town. I went on the Reddit LFG and found a 5th edition game and started playing another night a week, just because I wasn't getting enough. You find a new drug and you need more.
Yeah, right. That's how you get to the M-dash. Yeah. What is the this must have been kind of brave for you. I mean, you've talked about being in your bubble and being a little bit shy and stuff like that, but you went out and found random gamers, and joined the group.
And I think that really moving to 5th edition helped me in a way break out of I was viewing 4th edition too much as a board game and the strategy of it. And I was sitting there and analyzing my little cards and figuring out what do I do next. And part of that was just because I was completely new and clueless as to what I was doing. But I think having a little bit more of a streamlined set of rules with 5th edition, although I recognize D&D is still very not streamlined, no matter which edition you're playing, it's still very much more free and easy for theater of the mind. You're not as focused on a battle map and everything. And so then I really discovered the joy of role play, and that it was really, you're just telling a story and you're goofing off with people and you're making crap up. And that was the first time in my life that I'd actually really gotten into a collaborative game. I've always been very competitive, always loved playing anything competitive. I'll take you on. But it was the first time that I had really discovered something that I could love just as much as competition and just as much as winning, but that wasn't about winning at all. And that I think was just a really neat experience for me.
Yeah, it is an amazing. Role playing is just crazy cool. The first time I played it, the first time I played it and really got it. Because when I first played it, I was GMing because I didn't know anybody. I was running it like a board game. I wasn't running it like an RPG, really, So that collaborative, endless opportunity, all the things you can do is just fantastic. Okay, so this was only like 3 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. You said, but already you have a whole bunch of professional credits to your name. So how did you you got your husband
by
GM,
accident.
then you found a local game group, and then you went and found a publisher. It sounds like.
She lined it all up. Well, I eventually took over and I was DMing the game. My husband started DMing, and then I eventually jumped over and I DM'd, convinced the group to switch to 5e. Everybody but my husband was delighted to do that.
Move aside. I'll be
exactly.
getting out of here.
But when I was doing that, we were no, he's a better DM than me. I just wanted to have some fun with it. But we were playing in Eberron, and I ran Keith Baker's 3.5 adventure Fallen Angel, which is from one of the Gold Dungeon magazines. Okay. And it of course does not have a 5e version. It was just all the 3.5 stuff. And so I was converting that and running it for my own game. And then I had discovered the Dungeon Masters Guild, and there's this website that you can publish stuff that you did, and maybe people would think that it's useful. So I wasn't ever planning on making money or anything like that. I think I put it up pay as you want, but I did a little.
That's the right attitude to have going into playing.
Not making money.
Yeah,
you will not
money.
Be rich.
Yeah, Then if you make even a tiny little bit, that's upside, right?
It's a pleasant surprise, and then if you accidentally turn it into a full-time job, bonus. But yeah, so I was just putting together my notes that I had done for my own home game, and I stuck them up, and I kind of fell head first both into the Discord community for Eberron and the Discord community for the Dungeon Masters Guild community, both of which were really open, welcoming, hey, we love this, we love what we're doing, come and play with us sort of attitudes. And so I just kind of it all took off from there. There was a community project starting the Eberron community of an adventure path, the Across Eberron adventure path. And they wanted an editor. So I got talked into editing for that. And then we kept editing things.
That was the first thing you did for
anyone else. Yeah. Other than my random little baby, adventure conversion. That's when I started. Originally just started as copy editor, and then over the course of the series transitioned to the managing editor, editor-in-chief, whatever you want to call it. But what am I?
For the Eberron.
I just heard a noise on my computer. I just lost. So I was editing with Eberron, and this was before the hardcover existed.
Right. Okay.
The hardcover did not exist. We had the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron was a PDF product. That you could buy in the DMsGuild, but there was no 5th edition Eberron as far as 99% of the D&D community was concerned. So we finished up this little humble adventure path at about the same time as the Eberron hardcover was announced. And then so suddenly Eberron went from this little tiny little thing on the DMsGuild to this enormous, hey, everybody wants to buy this project. So that's when Across Eberron started getting a lot more visibility. And then over the course of working on that, I worked with Wayne Chang, who became the producer for Keith's upcoming, well, now published, but the then upcoming Exploring Eberron hardcover that Keith, the setting creator, was going to write. Okay. So I then kind of got accidentally drafted to edit the book for the setting creator of Eberron, which was something that if you had told me a couple of years ago I'd be doing, I would have laughed in your face. So the short version is I have literally no idea how this all happened. And it was an accident.
Well, I want to acknowledge False Aesop asks what made you first write for DMsGuild. So I think that answered that. I want to back up to a couple other questions. Have you ever play tested something you've edited? And if so, which happened first?
Which happened first? Yes. First answer is yes, I have. I think in all cases that I've play tested things, it's been before I edited them. There were one or two. I think one of the Across Eberron adventures I play tested, and I don't even remember if I had read the whole thing before I play tested, but I was one of the players for it. And then we just recently published a new, slightly longer form adventure through Across Eberron called Escape from Riedra. It's set in the psionically active totalitarian state of Riedra and Sarlona. But that was actually the first Eberron adventure I ever played. Imogen, who is one of our other Across Eberron writers and co-editors with me, she is a phenomenal writer and a phenomenal everything. But she DM'd this game once upon 2 years ago. And we weren't ever planning on.
Did you meet her at an M- party?
I met her on the Eberron Discord, in fact. But no, she She DM'd a game for 4 or 5 of us, and over the next 2 years worked on polishing it up, and then we eventually put it together as an official DMsGuild product. And so it was really fun in that particular case to take literally the first Eberron adventure I ever played, and over the course of several years suddenly see that being published. So yes.
The astronomancer says M dash for life. So I have a couple more questions. I somehow fell into asking them in reverse chronological order. I guess it's a stack. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so now I'm trying to read backwards. Oh yeah, here's a good one. Kanga Mooster. We always have this fear of saying these names incorrectly that people come up with on the Twitch chat, but then you just like dive into it. Are there any specific people that you'd credit to your start in DMsGuild, given your support of so many other creators there? You support other creators. Good for you.
I'm apparently supportive. I actually was, for a while, I was one of the admins on the unofficial creator Discord server. So I had to step back just due to time constraints recently, but I've done what I can to try to give other new people a little bit of a boost, because I had nice people giving me a boost. But yeah, it is all Patrick Dunning's fault that I published Fallen Angel on DMsGuild. I will blame that on him. He is sitting in this chat. He knows who he is. It is all his fault. And then when I came into the DMsGuild community, a few people were really, really welcoming and have really all along the way poured encouragement into me and support, and whether it's with working alongside them in projects or simply just being like someone to vent to or need encouragement. Anne Gregerson has been a phenomenal delight. If any of you that know Anne, she is amazing. Steve Fiddler has also been really, really supportive and awesome along the way. As far as DMsGuild people, I could name a dozen wonderful, amazing people. Justice, who I think you're having on the show next week.
That's right. And you've also worked with
Sadie
Lowry.
She came on. She's actually one of the newbies that I tried to drag in more to the community, and it seems to have worked pretty well. Anthony Joyce has been really awesome. There's a million people. If I didn't name you, it's not because I don't love you.
There we go. I'm going to cut you off right there. You were just about to name someone, and I cut you off. There you go.
Yeah, it's all your fault.
Yeah, there you go. The first question last, false Aesop, serious question. What was it like trying to coordinate a project as large as a community adventure path?
Everything in life is about juggling. The important thing to know when juggling, however, is that not all balls that you're juggling are the same. Some of the balls you're juggling are glass, and if you throw them and then you drop them, they're going to fall on the ground, they're going to shatter. And then others you're going to juggle and you're going to drop them, and that's okay because they're rubber and they're going to bounce. So if you're coordinating a community adventure path or anything in life, it's not about actually catching all of the balls. It's about learning when you can throw all the balls up in the air and run away because they're rubber, and you can go take a nap, and knowing which ones will break. That is my really, really awful analogy.
I think it's
but as far as what it was actually
that's new. That's a good one. I think it's great.
It's not original. I stole it from someone. I heard it about 6 months ago. That is not my creation. It's really interesting. It's
all about hiding your sources.
Exactly. It's all about bringing people together and giving them the resources that they need. And that's what I've done all my professional life in other areas, whether that's coordinating with students to help them, put their degree plans together or whatever. It's not ultimately any different. It's about saying, I have a group of people and they have things that they need. How can I hook them up with what they need to get that done? How can I make their life easier? I don't really consider myself to ever be the one doing the hard work. It's just my job to help enable everybody else to move the pieces around so that they can do the hard work.
So I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the Discord server for Eberron, and I think another Discord server. And so tell me about what happens on an Eberron Discord server.
Everything. I'm part of more than two, but I'm part of two primary ones. One is the big Eberron fan community. That's just like you would have any fan community. We have 36 or so channels, everything from lore questions to talking about mechanics to randomly chatting about the most recent release that Keith has put out or whatever. So it's just a whole bunch of IRC chat rooms in the 21st century.
Okay.
And then I'm also part of a much smaller play-by-post server that's, I mean, we play D&D via text and we're nerds. But I mean, what was the original question?
I asked what happens on an Eberron Discord server. And by the way, chat is weighing in with all sorts of things that you missed, like food wars and shenanigans and hot takes and fashion discussions. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes, what happens is a lot of people asking for obscure sources from a Dragon magazine that only 3 people have ever heard of, and we all go and track it down and then have a deep philosophical discussion about how that coordinates with Keith's most recent blog post and whether this is actually meant to be a contradiction or whether that's actually expansion of lore. And
right
important life discussions.
Exactly. Okay, so Eberron. So how did you land in Eberron specifically? Like there's out of all the campaign settings out there, what is it that drew you to Eberron?
Like everything
I don't mean
in my
that
life, it was an accident.
Okay.
It was when I was switching. I had been playing in 4E. We were playing the Points of Light setting, whatever that 4E adventure path was. And when I was moving into 5E, I was joining this game and it was homebrew, had nothing to do with Eberron, but I was building a character. And so I was searching online for the different character options and I found the recently released UA that had Eberron character options, including the Changeling. Now, I didn't know what Eberron was, but the Changeling sounded really heckin' awesome. So I wanted to be this character that shapeshifted. And so in the process of trying to discover things about this shapeshifting whatever the Changeling was, I accidentally fell neck deep in an entire world of lore that had nothing at all to do with anything I'd ever, known before. I was familiar with the Forgotten Realms. I was familiar with steampunk. I was familiar with all, but then there's like this Eberron thing, and I just kind of kept reading, and then I realized I wanted to play it, and that's when I evicted my husband from the DM spot, and I said, "Stop! I want to play Eberron, and if you won't run it for me, I'll run it."
Nice.
So
nice.
That's how I ended up there. It's the Changeling's fault.
Okay, so I was going to ask you how, like, to work on Eberron, how you would absorb so much knowledge relating to it, but I think you've answered that. I mean, you didn't come into Eberron to be, initially professional. You came into Eberron initially as a fan, and you played in the Eberron setting, and you got on the server where you got exposed to all sorts of deep philosophical questions about Eberron. And so I think it's
in college. Sorry. In college, I was the person who memorized the student handbook for fun. I have always been the person that just enjoyed absorbing random useless information in whatever area of interest I'm currently in. So rather than, memorizing the student handbook and everybody else's degree requirements, I this time around got to memorize random useless Eberron lore and engage in those deep philosophical discussions.
Right. Right. Okay, great. It might interest you to know, I have a little bit of my own interest in Eberron. I left Wizards before Eberron got published, but I was involved in the conceptualizing of this idea of, hey, let's do a campaign setting where we open it up to submissions from fans or from professionals, anybody in the game, that's interested in fantasy gaming. And of course, Keith Baker's submission made history as and it's a fantastic setting. So I've always had some affection in my heart for Eberron because just from the marketing angle that was behind it. I know that kind of, it's not sounding like a sleazy business guy, but that was a fun it was a fun project for me from that.
One of my dreams is to one day see the original setting submission that I'm sure is locked away in a little secret strong box somewhere, and maybe even the full original setting Bible before it all got expanded. So,
oh gosh,
I'm sure those are locked up in the vaults and will never be shared. But
no, those things don't tend to get locked up. They tend to get put into some desk drawer of some employee who then, and it gets forgotten. Maybe the employee moves on and somebody finds it years later, or it just gets thrown out or something. I mean, I hate to sort of crush your dreams there, Laura, but
one day.
So somebody might have grabbed it on their way out of the office. Who knows? That's usually what happens if those things survive at all. Okay, so hey, let's talk about a couple of the Eberron products. I don't know if there's a preferred way of talking about it. I'm just going in the order that you listed them in your credits. You mentioned Exploring Eberron. So how? Actually, no. I want to back up. I'm going to ask a broader question before we start going into specific products. So,
okay.
So, just the so what's the relationship between Keith Baker and Wizards of the Coast and the community? I mean, you guys are producing stuff independently of Wizards, or what's the deal?
That is a good question. Once upon a time, Keith, I don't think he's ever actually been a Wizards of the Coast employee. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows. But he's always written for Wizards of the Coast as kind of a freelance-ish thing.
Sure,
I don't know.
Sure.
That was well before my time.
Yeah.
But when the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron was published in 2018, whenever that was, it became therefore a DMsGuild open setting. The only materials that can be published on the Dungeon Masters Guild are those from specific approved Wizards of the Coast intellectual property, so like the Forgotten Realms. And when Wayfinder's Guide existed, suddenly it became open that anybody could publish things about Eberron on the DMsGuild. So Keith took full advantage of that opportunity and launched into work on really a lot of the things he'd always wanted to write about for 15 years. And it just had never had the chance to come together in a hardcover. Because you only have so many splat books you can do for 3rd edition. And eventually they were like, no, we're not going to do an entire supplement about the oceans. Sorry. So he really had the opportunity to take all of these things that he had been dreaming and planning and longing to write more about for almost 2 decades and poured all of that into one enormous book. So he still does not work for Wizards of the Coast. He's still good friends with lots of the people there, but he is officially just as much of a freelancer as I or anyone else who's publishing on the DMsGuild. He just is allowed to upload PDFs and he is allowed to sell them, and Joe Schmo on the street can do the same thing. So it's a really fun opportunity on the DMsGuild to really bring together a lot of creators. I've had the chance to work with him, and I've worked on some product that Ed Greenwood has contributed to. So it's been kind of fun, seeing, both from the Forgotten Realms and the Eberron side, like these people that created them, love these things, being able just to jump in and work alongside normal people like me. Not that Keith and Ed aren't normal people. Don't tell them I said they're not normal.
Well, Ed's not. Let's Ed is definitely not normal, but I love him.
Keith passes for normal most of the time. He's good times. But yeah, so he's just a DMsGuild publisher like me or anyone else that wants to put something online. Okay,
so you coordinate with him on these products, like you edit products that he writes. How much? I guess maybe the answer is different depending on which product we're talking about. But it sounds like Keith is involved with some products and but not with all of them.
So we have. I've worked on probably 24-ish Eberron products by this point. Only 2 of them that are published so far. 3 things that Keith has published so far. So the rest are other community things. Some of them are through Across Eberron, which is just the name of the bunch of nerds that decided to get together and collaborate to publish adventures. And some of them are through random other side projects with friends. I
gotta ask, does Keith have could somebody independent of Keith just go in and start publishing Eberron stuff, and he'd have
absolutely
no control over it? No?
You can write your own Eberron adventure right now, Peter,
and post it, and he doesn't get to veto it, say, wait, no,
nope.
This is my world. But I imagine that if you're a real Eberron fan, though, you're you would check with him out of respect and find out if it fits.
Well, that is the joy of the Discord community, that if you do want help researching and saying, hey, there's this really fun idea I have, but I'm not sure, can you guys help me expand it? You can log on and have a whole community of thousands of people to help you so that you don't have to ping Keith for every single question.
Somebody will shoot you down if you do it wrong.
Yeah, but there's not really a matter of doing it wrong. There's a certain level of fun and flexibility as far as you need to understand a basic contingent of lore for Eberron, but I feel like as opposed to the Forgotten Realms, leaves a lot more of the questions open. What happened with the morning? We don't know what happened with the morning. You can literally make up an adventure that reveals the cause of the morning, and nobody can say, no, you're doing it wrong, because there is no canon answer for it. So I fully encourage you to write a Mournland adventure that decides what actually causes the morning. It was the elves. It's always the elves.
Perfect. Okay, so we have some questions coming in on chat that
they're all talking about.
We'll get to some of your products specifically eventually. Conga Mooster asks, since you mentioned play by post, how do you think that the kind of play will change, has been affected by COVID or other kinds of online play?
Oh gosh, all forms of online play, I think, have skyrocketed just because of COVID. We're all stuck in our homes, or should be stuck in our homes. For those of you that aren't stuck, go be stuck in your home. Yeah. So it's been a really great outlet for people to still stay active in a community. Maybe when your schedules don't work, play by post, it's a little more asynchronous, so you don't all have to be online at the same time. So I think, we've seen a growth in that in a similar way to, I think, all kinds of online games have done. But at the same time, it just feels like life is normal. And it's been really a great thing for me to have gotten settled in so many Discord communities before COVID hit. By the time, the beginning of 2020 came around, I already had several really solid friend networks that were entirely online. And that was really for the first time in my life I could have said that. I've always had, internet friends and games I played online and stuff, but it wasn't ever like an actual community of people I would consider good friends. And so that was really neat with 2020 happening and me not feeling like I was completely isolated in the way I might have been if this had happened, say, 5 years ago.
Right. Well, good. Zomtronic asks, what advice would you give those looking to get into content creation on the Dungeon Masters Guild?
Biggest thing is to collaborate. Don't publish alone. Not that publishing alone is bad. My first thing I published was kind of it was alone. I'm the only person that wrote it. But you're still, no man is an island. And the more you can find people to, round out the things that you're not great at and where your strengths can complement each other, the better off you're going to be. As far as more practical advice, Justice Armand actually just wrote a really great blog post about this like a couple weeks ago. I could probably just dig up that link and pop it in chat, and that would be much better than me rambling on for half an hour about how to get involved in DMsGuild. But my short version would say find an editor. You don't have to pay an editor up front. Most DMsGuild editors in the little tight-knit community will work for a royalty share, especially the newer editors that are trying to put together a portfolio and the newer writers that are trying to build up a portfolio so they can hire editors. You're a perfect match because you can find someone, they might not have quite the portfolio that you want or the experience you want, but you can really learn and grow together. And that's what all of us are doing. We're all just making it up as we go. Anybody that pretends they have it all together is lying, because we don't.
I by the way, I am going to emphasize that if there's anything I've learned in life is that my alarm bells go off anytime somebody starts talking to me like they know everything, even if they say, or even if it's just about a topic, like I know everything about this topic. No.
No, we are all making it up.
Yeah, it's Conga Mooster is now apologizing for asking so many questions, although I am applauding Conga Mooster because we love to get questions. As someone
I know who they are, and I'm going to hunt them down later.
Yeah. Did you pay them?
No, I may have to actually throw things at them for coming here and stirring up so much trouble. No, King is great.
This is great. As someone who edited and did layout work for a ton of adventures, what's your biggest pet peeve when you look at other adventures that you didn't work on? Okay, now that's a good question. I like Conga Mooser.
Biggest pet peeve. Biggest pet peeve.
Yeah,
I think one of the most striking is the ones that when you didn't even read the style guide, or you didn't really even look at what a hardcover adventure looks like. I fully support deviating from the style guide if you know what it is and you make a conscious decision to do it differently. But if you want to publish something for 5th edition, you need to put it in a format that's going to be recognizable and approachable to the DMs. You need to assume that whoever's reading it is fairly new to 5th edition, and it needs to feel comfortable to them. So you need to do the basic effort to figure out, why is 5th edition doing what it's doing? Why is it laying things out this way? Or why is it wording things this way? And then choose to deviate from that, know the rules before you break them, sort of thing. So that's probably one of my biggest surface level pet peeves.
It sounds like I just have to segue that into, you worked on a project called the 5e Microsoft Word template. Now I gotta say, but I so funny, Laura, when I saw this in your list of credits, I just 5e and Microsoft Word being in the same title doesn't register in your brain. You're so my brain weeded out the 5e and oh, she did a Microsoft Word template. Okay, cool. And then I come back, wait, 5e. Yeah. So I think this was to help people be able to present their work in what you just said, the format.
It is actually one of my very best-selling products, which was a complete accident. I make more money off of this than I do just about anything. So you guys go buy my Word template. It's awesome. But no, it was born out of a editing style sheet that I was using. So if I have an editing client, I'm normally, working with them in Google Docs maybe, and I edit everything out there. But then when I'm passing it off to the person that's doing layout, if I'm not the one doing layout, a lot of the time the layout designer wants it in an actual style sheet, because if you put it in Word and you do it right in Word, it maps all of the Word styles to the InDesign styles and it magically just poofs, right? That way the layout designer isn't sitting there manually italicizing every single word all over again from how it was in Google Docs.
And it preserves your M dashes, right?
Exactly. It's very important.
Yeah.
So this was born out of really just something I was using to format things to pass on to be putting into InDesign. But I realized that there were a lot of people that were using there's a Word template that DMsGuild provides that's really just really basic, bare bones, like here's a heading and there's not really much more than that. And so it's a good starting point for people just to, get a feel for this is how an AL adventure might need to be laid out, but it doesn't get you to looking like it's a hardcover. And you're never with Word gonna easily make it look just like, the player's handbook. But I was able to do a lot of work behind the scenes to do styles and to, change the page background and to make it so that you can, with just a normal Microsoft Word install, you can format whether it's a race or an adventure or whatever it is you want to publish. You can actually make it feel a lot like the other things like GM Binder and Home Brewery get you, most of the way there. And it's similar to that. You're not going to have the same results as if you were using InDesign. But yeah, so people have, oh my gosh, I published it just because I was like, I've got this, I should put it out there. Maybe 100 people will use it. I've charged $5 because I was like, I might as well make a little bit of coffee money off of it. But I should have charged more than $5. But no, it's been really great because we're at somewhere well upwards of thousands of sales at this point. And it's still, on a daily basis, people are buying it and sending me messages saying, hey, thanks for this. So it's blown my mind. I love it that people have
priced it just right, because there is price elasticity of demand sometimes.
Yeah. And I just wanted it to be there to be available for people. If I think I actually have a link at the bottom of the page that you can pick it up for free if you can't afford it. So I'm obviously not making very much money. But no, it's great. Just seeing how many people have enjoyed taking that and learning how to put things together with the right style and the right formatting and what to italicize and what should be a hanging indent or
that's
whatever.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're talking about layout. False Aesop asks, I know you do a lot of the layout in products you worked on. How do you find such good stock art?
Magic. The DMs
Laura,
Guild
by the way,
has
Laura,
some.
you do not have to answer this question. If you don't want to give away your secret on how you find good stock
I
art,
have no.
I would just come up with, make up something.
Okay, you want to know my secret? It's the same as how I fell into Eberron, and the same way I fell into the DMs Guild, which is by accident. Accident. No, I mean there are some helpful free stock art sites if you're wanting to do free stuff. It's more photo based. But the DMs Guild content packs, they actually have a number of freely licensed DMs Guild images from official older hardcovers that you can use. So lots of old monster manual from 3.5 art and stuff like that. So I don't know. I have no idea, False. I'm sorry.
Okay. So there's a bunch of questions about the Oxford comma and the favorite kind of dash. We already know that one. And
I am pro Oxford comma.
Yes,
I am pro M dash.
That's the Oxford. That's including the last comma of the series as opposed to leaving it out.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I am a fan of the Chicago manual style.
Yes, of course, the Chicago manual style. I was nervous about asking you the Oxford comma question because if you'd given me the wrong answer, it put me in a sour mood.
I'm an editor. I have to have the right opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I by the way, one of my heroes was Beverly Marshall Sailing is one. She's still alive. I didn't say was, but she was executive editor at Wizards of the Coast for all the years I was there from the very beginning.
Great.
And she was just a delight to work with, and taught me a lot of respect for editing and the process. So but I'm going to blow off these questions because I haven't got the chance to ask you any of my questions hardly at all.
Sorry, folks.
They're getting kind of silly talking about commas and M dashes and stuff like that. But of course they know you're an editor. You're like, okay, let's go.
Peter, what are your questions?
Yes, let's go. I have so many of these. I'm going down to like, where's my favorite one? I want to hear, and I apologize, I have not kept up with Eberron, obviously, but one that looked really interesting, the Prisms of Eberron. That sounded really intriguing. What
so that is actually, it's a little bit of an oddball, not the supplement itself is an oddball, but it's a little bit of a departure from a lot of my other work. The Prism is actually a standalone class that Steve Fiddler published back a couple years ago. It has the best way I could describe the Prism class is it kind of has a lot of Scion type of it's a feelings based class, and you have colors and emotions, and the way that you reflect and you can affect other people's emotions and stuff like that is kind of like the fluff of the class. And so he published that back several years ago, and it was really, really well received. And so maybe a year-ish ago, he decided to do a add on to it and make some subclasses that were Eberron based, specifically from the Kalashtar, which is, Eberron, psionic, empathic.
Well, and by the way, I'm a big fan of psionics, because I'm old school. I started playing AD&D in 1978, and psionics were in the player's handbook at the beginning.
Yes.
The subsequent editions of D&D did not always give psionics sort of the front page recognition that psionics deserve, and so so yeah, that might be why my eyes went to that. But there was also something about the way the mechanics.
Yeah, it's a different. Yeah, it's a different play style than what most people go into thinking, I want to play a Scion. It's not going to feel quite the same. But as far as the kind of character building that it lends itself to, it's great fun. If anybody likes anything vaguely Scion or emotional or color, just go check it out. It's a really, really awesome class. And Steve, you can pay me later.
Okay, so the other one I really wanted to ask you about. Oh, now I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, here we go. The Clifftop Adventurers Guild initiation in the Sham Chicken.
Sharn Chicken.
Sharn.
Yes, all the credit. Yes, Sharn. Yes, the city of Sharn. All the credit for that goes to Imogen. I did not write that. But in the first adventure of the Convergence Manifesto adventure path from across Eberron, it starts with the adventurers being inducted into the Clifftop Adventurers Guild. And so this the induction ceremony, you go to the top of a really high tower in Sharn, which has, these super, super high towers, and you jump off. And in Eberron, they have Featherfall tokens where it'll kind of activate, and then you can, save yourself from a horrible, gruesome death at the bottom of the towers. But the idea of Sharn Chicken, which is not my idea, it is Imogen's, but it's awesome, so I'll talk about it, is that you all jump off, and whoever activates the Feather token last wins. So you have to jump, and it's a spin kind of on the DMG chase rules, in that you have some complications, and you might have a sheet of plate glass that you're having to somehow dodge and do somersaults as you're hurtling through the air about to die. And so you just have several rounds, and you see whoever can last the longest without freaking out and activating their feather token. And then
you have to make like a will save each round or something like that.
Yeah, it has you do a wisdom save, I think, to keep you from losing your wits and activating it early. And then you just keep hurtling through the air and having more stunts pulled every round until it's shenanigans. Like there's no penalty for losing. It's just a kind of a silly, fun way to warm up at the beginning of the session. But Fired and Forgotten is the name of the adventure, and it is cool. So you guys should go play Sharn Chicken.
Okay, so you have a lot of credits here. What but your credits are not always in game design. Sometimes they're editing and layout and so on. So which product did you work on as a designer that you're most proud of?
So I can do writing, I can do mechanical design, but first and foremost, I most love editing. But I also have along the way done a bit of design. As far as what I'm most proud of, that would probably be a two-part answer. Part one would be Exploring Eberron, working alongside the setting creator on an actual hardcover for Eberron. In addition to doing editing and layout for that, I was also able to contribute a little bit to the game design, mostly mechanics and a little bit of writing. And apologies, it says my internet connection is unstable, so I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, I don't know if it's you or me. I hear you.
Okay, cool. It's giving me that message it was giving us earlier. But anyway, so being able to contribute contribute to, really developing the next generation of Eberron lore was, phenomenal. As far as products that more I worked on in terms of directing and writing myself, Eberronicon it's kind of like a mini encyclopedia pocket reference to Eberron. And so it takes all 15 years of Eberron writing, and it consolidates it. It kind of breaks it down like an index, here's, if you want to know about.
It seemed like a Wikipedia of Eberron in a way.
Yeah, like if you want to know about Breland, you can go to the Breland section, and then you can say, I want to learn more. And we have like a little reference at the bottom of each section to say, here are the places that we most recommend reading about it. So if you like the Blood of Old, but you have no idea where to read more, there are probably 2 or 3 really most solid references there. And we footnote for every single topic where you can go. Player reference or an easy DM reference for, if you're in the middle of a game and your player wants to roll history, you can read a little Eberronicon blurb and kind of give them a mini history check. But it also helps with it, if you want to do a deeper dive and run an entire adventure on something. I think really the gold in that is being able to jump in and see, where can I go to learn more? And so I did not by any means do all the writing on that. I gathered some really, really brilliant people that know much more about Eberron than I ever will. And they did all of the heavy lifting on that.
Nice.
But that was kind of the project I'm most proud of, as far as really being able to bring a reference that I think has made a difference in the 5e community and made a difference in helping Eberron to find a new generation of players. And that's been really fun to see its reception.
Great. So we have a false Aesop ask a question. Peter, ask her about the extraplanar DMV she put into the plane of law.
So I co-wrote one of the Across Eberron adventures, and Donvi is the plane of law and order. And you're in the middle of, you're fighting off the big bad, and he's trying to go and get this, the MacGuffin. And so you're chasing the MacGuffin, and he's chasing the MacGuffin. And in the middle of it, you end up in a giant line at what's essentially the DMV. and you're having to go through all this paperwork, and it's a giant skill challenge. It's the most ludicrous thing ever, and you're stuck. There's elevator music, and it's a really ridiculous scene. But yes, I did put basically the extraplanar DMV in an adventure that I wrote. I have no regrets.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've been talking almost exclusively about Eberron, but you have also done some work in the Forgotten Realms. Did you get a chance to work with Ed Greenwood?
I have.
How did that go?
Kind of. He was, I didn't get the chance to interact directly with him as much, but he was doing a lot of consulting along the side for the Elminster's Candlekeep Companion and Darkhold, what did we call it? Darkhold Secrets of the Zentrum, which I did. Those projects were led by MT Black and Justice Armand and Anthony Joyce. And so it was really fun getting to see all of these people who love a setting as much as I love Eberron. I enjoy playing in all settings. You give me a fantasy game and I will play it. I don't frankly care what setting it's in. But it was really fun seeing people nerding out over something else that I can understand their passion, but getting to kind of watch from the outside and learn more about something new, because I hadn't ever really, I knew that Candlekeep existed, but oops. Are you there? I just hit something and my docking station. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you just fine, and you look good too.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything's
okay.
You're on.
Cool. I think my lights went out. So if my green screen is looking greener now, I apologize. But yeah, so that was fun. I didn't as much, talk with Ed about the writing process, but I mean, he was present on Discord and I was present on Discord, and I got to see him kind of helping to guide and shape things.
Oh, great. That's great. And you mentioned Candlekeep. That looked to me like basically a big library in Faerun. Is that right?
Yes, it is an enormous library for nerds of magic. And we have a gorgeous map that Marco Bernardini did that has, like, if you've ever wondered what Candlekeep might look like, it's the most gorgeous map ever. And it has an adventure set there and lots of resources. I mean, random roll tables for if you're down in the catacombs and you want to come across a random encounter, you've got that. Some random books. It's just got a little bit of everything. It's a lot of fun.
So hey, I'm curious, since you've worked on Eberron and Forgotten Realms, and I mean, I have my opinion on the answer to the question I'm gonna ask, but I'm curious for your analysis. How would you contrast these two worlds?
Oh gosh, I did not know this question was coming. Was this on your brief? I think this is new.
No. These things just come to me, Laura. They just come, just.
Let's see. Just like all of Genga's questions.
You can wave me on, I did tell you can do that. No. You can X card. I don't want to go there.
It's a good question. I just want to do it justice. The biggest difference I think that comes is that Eberron was intentionally designed with the D&D setting in mind. And it said, if we have a world that has these magical presuppositions, if magic actually works the way mechanically we say it does, or did in 3.5 at least, what would that world look like? What would that do to politics? What would that do to technology? What would that realistically affect the entire world? And then starting from that presupposition, a world was built around it. Faerun is kind of the opposite. We just had a cool fantasy story, and then we started adding more and more on it, which isn't at all a criticism of it. There's such a vast and deep mythology in the Forgotten Realms, and it, especially for people who are looking for that really high fantasy itch, you're not going to find that many other places other than Forgotten Realms in terms of that depth and that much history and that many novels and spell plague and shifting world every 5 years. I like having the static nature of Eberron and having the predictability of it is kind of really a draw for me in terms of everybody's entering an Eberron game kind of from the same basic presuppositions of this is how it works, but then you can kind of stem off from there. I think really the biggest difference in terms of at least how it was all born and put together is, are you starting from how much are you integrating the mechanics in? Because the mechanics should always support the story. You should never be focused on the mechanics, but it's really fun seeing a setting where you can you don't have to suspend your disbelief as much. You don't have to say, well, if there are all of these high-powered wizards, level 20 wizards floating around, why do I need to be an adventurer, sort of thing. So that's, I think, a big difference that has drawn me to Eberron. But at the same time, I fully understand everybody that just loves that old-fashioned high fantasy. If you're looking for something like Merlin in it, you should probably go to the Forgotten Realms. If you want a little bit more of a magic punk vibe, Eberron's the place to be.
Right. Well, I think that's a fair analysis. Right off the top of your head, I think you did it. I think you did it spot on.
I try.
That's great. It's great. Okay. I kind of give you just a quick one because we're almost out of time, but I just noticed there was a question that came in ahead of the show on chat, and I want to get in. This is from Sorakel from Twitter. What is Laura's favorite project she has worked on so far?
That would probably go back to the same two I named, Exploring Eberron with Keith, and then Eberronicon, which Sorakel is actually one of my co-authors on that project. So he probably knows that I might answer that. But it was, they're just angling all of them. I love every single thing that I've worked on. So it's really hard to kind of pick a baby because they're all my babies, even though I didn't write on most of them. Being editor, you kind of, it's like being a nanny, like you've raised this child, even if you aren't actually related to them. So I love them all. They're great.
All right. So my final question for you on our show, since we are out of time, is so I mean, Dungeons and Dragons has been around a long time. It's been around since the 70s, and there are hundreds of people that have worked on Dungeons and Dragons. So how do you what do you hope to bring to Dungeons and Dragons?
See, I feel like I should give you a grand, ambitious answer about, I don't know, something. But honestly, the same thing that I've brought to any of my jobs, which is really just liking to help people network and give people the resources they need. I don't think of myself as somebody that has this grand master plan or that's going to leave this indelible mark on the future of role playing. That's not what I'm there to do. I don't consider myself a designer first and foremost. I'm not going to create the next greatest setting. I want to be that person behind the scenes, letting everybody else be the person to do that, if that makes sense. So, I mean, you get a D&D rock star in there, and I want to be that person kind of helping them make it happen. So kind of the answer is not. I prefer to take a back seat and hide, and you dragging me in here for this interview was quite an achievement. But I mean, I want to make people's dreams come true. Whatever creator that is, or DM or whatever, I just want to be able to give them the resources they need to make it happen.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much, Laura. That's a great answer and a great interview. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that wraps up another episode of Fireside with Peter Adkison here on Gen Con TV. My guest next week, as we mentioned, will be Justice Armand. And, but that's a whole week away. In the meantime, we have lots of other programming for you to watch here on Gen Con TV. Friday at 2 p.m., join Bonsai and Emma and Derek and Isabella Von Gould for our Tabletop News show called Table Takes. On Monday at 6 p.m., these are all Pacific, with the brothers Murph. And then on Wednesday at 1:30 Pacific, we have board games with This Game Gets Dicey. And then at 4 p.m., back to me with Justice Armand. If you miss any of our shows, you can find them about a day or so later on the Gen Con video channel of YouTube, including all the shows that we've had before Fireside, my interviews with various people with Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons over the years. If you want to connect with other Gen Con fans, join the Gen Con Discord server. So please remember to follow, subscribe, turn on your notifications, tell your friends, and and thanks again to our guest, Laura Hirsbrunner, to Marcus Mays, our producer, Derek Guder, to Dungeon Masters Guild for introducing us to the new voices of Dungeons and Dragons, and to Gen Con TV for hosting us. But most of all, thank you for watching.